Hey everybody, welcome back. I am your host, Joe JDF Foster, and today I'm going to give my review on a movie called Bait from 2012, as well as in dealing with what it's about. I'm going to discuss my top films as a recommend, my personal choice, as what are the greatest films based around sharks and what they are. And this list will not be a top 10, it's a top 4. So let's dive into it. First, let's discuss the movie. Some information on this movie. It's from, like I said, 2012. It's called Bait. In Australia, it was released as Bait for the regular release. Only on Blu-ray was it released in 3D, giving it its name Bait 3D. And this movie, when I first came across it, I thought it was going to be, by the way they were describing it, they were trying to make like a Jaws movie where it was supposed to be like this horror film that was going to be, ooh, let's try and be scary while just having a bunch of sharks run around. Turns out I was wrong. The idea of the film is actually, it's not even listed first as a horror movie. It's listed as an action and a drama, which it turns out it actually is very much an action and a drama film. Horror is on the list, but it's later in the list. I think it's like third or fourth out of 5. So, despite how some would see that as it being a high recommendation, it's a horror film. It's actually not. It's not scary. It's got some moments of comedy to it, from what I've seen. I mean, from when I watched it, but it is more of an action drama type deal because of how it's done. The idea of the movie is that a tsunami strands people in a shopping mall, and unfortunately, due to the tsunami bringing in these heavy waves, it brings in some hungry, hungry sharks. Initially, I thought I came across this on the Tubi movie app, TUBI movie app on my PlayStation. But when I watched the film, I realized I had seen this movie before. I saw it on Sci-Fi. I don't remember when it was, and I remember it was late though. And I do remember that it was late. There wasn't really much on. This came on, I thought, hey, it sounds like a good idea. Let's see it. Well, like I said, I thought it was going to be like Jaws or the idea of a Sharknado because, well, unfortunately, this was coming out. I forgot the year it came out, and when I came across it on Tubi, on that little movie app recently, I thought it was again. I thought it was going to be, if it wasn't a horror action, it was going to be more of an action comedy, making it like the Sharknado series or a mix of the two. This one actually it did end up being a mix of the two, as it's action and drama rather than horror or comedy. Like I said, when I initially came across this, when I first saw it, it was because I was bored and just looking for something I hadn't seen. Or, well, actually, when I first came across it, it was because it was on regular TV. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was Sci-Fi Channel I saw it on. And it's because I was bored and there was nothing on. But when I came across it on the movie app, it was because I was looking for something I hadn't seen and I was bored and just wanted to watch something. And I've forgotten that the movie starts out a little slow, but it kind of kicks into the action in the early minutes of the film to make up for it. While it seems like it's drawn out at first, because to me it was, you didn't have like an instant action or instant scene that got you drawn into the film. Within the first 5 to 10 minutes, it'll pick up and actually get you drawn in with the action in it. You're introduced to the characters early, and you get a hint of what you're looking forward to in it as well within the first, I give it 5 to 7. The first shark attack is done within the first 7 minutes of the movie. Well, the thing is that in the first 7 minutes of the movie, when it does the shark actually looks and seems more believable than other films I have seen. I mean, a lot of other films I have seen. Now, it's not, ooh, yeah, ooh, this shark is perfectly real, viable type deal, but it is well enough done. And there could be a reason for that, which I have a feeling is actually right, but on why. But I also could see it if it wasn't the actual idea of what they had done, and it was something else they'd been working with that did that scene. And something I'm a little curious about, this isn't just for this movie, but this is for like majority of films that deal with shark attacks. They seem to have this idea that great whites are the most aggressive sharks out there. And this actually makes me wonder why they do this, because National Geographic and other educational shows and networks have actually shown great whites are actually not that mean. I mean, yeah, they're aggressive, but they're not as aggressive as other sharks that could have been used, such as the tiger shark or the bull shark. And the bull shark is actually very mean. Like, you just get within its vicinity and it wants to attack. The great white, it's territorial, but it's not, like, crazy territorial. Also, something I wonder about is why a number of these films don't actually show zombie shark. It was something I learned while watching one of the educational programs, which is that you can actually put some sharks into a zombie-like state, where like you touch them in a certain area, and it like freezes them up, and if you turn them upside down, they'll rest there floating, basically, in a sleep state. Which is kind of odd, because the idea was always believed that if sharks stopped swimming, they died. Turns out with these sharks, it's not, with these types of sharks, it's not true. Because they don't stop moving. They'll move in their sleep, but they'll float. Instead of actually just moving along, swimming normally. And the thing is, it's only as long as they stay upside down that they'll stay in this state. Now, this movie, I don't remember it taking advantage of that situation of the zombie state. Because if I remember correctly, the great whites aren't the ones who actually use the zombie state. But I do think that would be an interesting idea for a future shark movie, is to do that. Anyways, back to the film. Another thing I noticed is that in the film, at around 10 to 10 minutes and 30 seconds in it, they have these birds flying around. And it gets like a close-up of one of them, and it starts like squawking. The way this was done, it actually reminded me and also made me think that it might have been an homage to Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Film that came out back in the black and white days, and actually had it where a town comes under attack by a bunch of birds. But like I said, this was due to the way they were flying and the fact that the birds were grouped together, and it got such a nice close-up on the bird when it started doing squawking. Now, on to some interesting details. In this first one, I'm probably going to screw up on the name. I might be mispronouncing it, but I refer to the man as Julian McMahon. He was in the TV show Charmed with Alyssa Milano. The one that started Alyssa Milano back in the 90s and early 2000s. As the half-demon, half-human Cole Turner. And if you saw the Fantastic Four movies that featured Jessica Alba. Again, sorry if I mispronounced that name. He played the character of Victor Von Doom. Another thing he did was a TV show called Nip Tuck. I don't remember his character because, personally, I was not a fan of the show and saw no interest in it. Also, in this movie, they used 3 animated sharks, which actually made me think of Jaws. Although I'll get into that when I get later on. The director of the movie wanted to avoid using CGI, but due to their low budget they had, some scenes necessitated that they use CGI. Which, like I said, with the opening of the film, the way the shark attack is done in it, could actually be the reason why the shark looks so well done and so realistic, is because it's a CGI rather than one of their animatronic ones. A rumor that came out when they decided to do it, when they wanted to do a sequel of this movie, they were going to do a sequel called Deep Water, where a plane mysteriously crashes and comes under attack. But, like I said, and this is a rumor, production of the movie was halted, or, well, suspended is how they phrased it, due to similarities to the disappearance of Malaysian Flight 370. Like I said, that is a rumor, the same as the next thing I'm about to say. But, like I said, that was a rumor, and like I said, the only reason I'm listening was rumors because I only found them on 1, maybe 2. I couldn't find them repeated anywhere else or on some. In other words, I couldn't find any proof to back these two things up. The second rumor I found about that actually deals with this movie specifically, rather than a rumor for its sequel, was that when this movie was originally done, the co-writer and executive producer, Russell Mulcahy, I'm probably mispronouncing that, and I do apologize, wanted to direct it, but at the time, he was involved with the TV series Teen Wolf, which made this impossible. So, he actually went out and hired the person who did direct this, Kimball Randall. And to me, that was actually a smart move because the director actually did really well with the film. And I'd actually be curious to know how much of it he kept being realistic to this original script and writing idea that Russell had in mind. Anyways, like I said, I told you I was going to do a short thing. Now I'm going to do my top shark films. And like I said, there's only 4 of them. And this movie did not make the list, though it did come close. Because originally I started out with like a top 7. And this one would have been 8th if I'd made a top 10. But a lot of my top 7 had copies on it. So I went through the list, thought about it, and edited it down to 4 films. And I'm going to include some interesting facts. And this film, man, by the looks of it, this video is actually going to be shorter than the rest that I've done. Anyways, number 4 from 1999. Deep Blue Sea, starring LL Cool J, the rapper and actor, who in this movie plays more of a comical relief and religious type role rather than some other roles like he did in Rollerball or prior films, or being the rapper that he was. Although he does have a song at the end of the movie that's played. Anyways, the idea behind Deep Blue Sea is that this guy comes to a research facility. His company's been overseeing it, and the idea is they're trying to find a cure or a way, anyways, to extend Alzheimer's patients' chances of keeping their memories, if possible, to at some point cure it. which actually this is something that's actually been considered in real life. The idea of using sharks because of their brain ability to produce certain types of hormones. I mean, growth hormones, and the fact that their brains have been unchanged for so long in history. But anyways, in this film, these doctors were doing this. Well, two of the members, sorry, two of the members secretly made an agreement and went behind the others' backs and broke certain ethical treaties. I mean, certain ethical boundaries and agreements in the scientific community, and genetically altered the sharks' brains where they started producing more growth hormone. Well, as a side effect, these sharks became smarter, or smart sharks, and started showing it. Well, you got sharks that are trapped somewhere and nowhere for them to go. Come on, they're like anybody. They basically became like humans. They wanted to find out what's out there. They wanted to escape because nobody could go with cabin fever like that, and they were stuck not by their choice. But anyways, the idea is these sharks basically go on a rampage, and they're trying to figure out how do we stop these sharks from reaching. I mean, from being able. I mean, and they ended up causing this research facility that's actually based in the ocean or the sea. I can't remember which. It's one of the two. It's either the ocean or the sea. But anyways, they have them out there, and these sharks start doing things to cause the facility to sink. They trap them off from being able to communicate with the outside world. They start finding a way to flood the facility, which in turn, the humans who are here are trapped, and that means they're trapped with animals that are older than humans and have lived a lot and are way more dangerous and simple-minded. Only problem is you've raised these sharks' brain powers, thereby increasing their thought process and their ability to plan. And so the sharks are flooding the facility. Well, you flood a facility with humans and there's sharks around. To me, that screams all-you-can-eat buffet for the sharks. But again, this is another one that uses great whites, which, like I said before, confuses me on why you would use great whites when there are other sharks that are proven to be more dangerous and better ideas, probably. Number 3, from 2013, Sharknado. The movie stars, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, Ian Ziering, who, if you've seen Beverly Hills 90210, the original, not the sequel that came out in the mid-2000s, starred Ian Ziering as Steve Sanders. And also, when they did the most recent reboot idea, a series called BH 90210, he played both himself and his character. Which, by the way, what made that show interesting in the reboot, in the BH 90210 one, to me, is that it was different from the original, because while they were playing their characters for the show, it was also showing their outside lives where they were supposed to be playing versions of themselves and showing the drama of their lives or how great their lives had become over time. But anyways, back to the movie on Sharknado. It uses the idea of a weather phenomenon. Despite the name, it's actually a hurricane. that somehow ends up causing tornadoes to occur. And it takes what in Deep Blue Sea was referred to as nature's deadliest creature. And another thing about Deep Blue Sea is they talk about how they took nature's deadliest creature and they gave it a brain. Well, in this one, they didn't give it a brain. They gave it a form of mobility that allowed it to travel on land. By using the tornado that absorbed the sharks, these different tornadoes were taking the sharks, moving them on land, and throwing them in different areas. Problem is that the areas had flooded. And by the city becoming flooded, the sharks got more land to travel on because they didn't have to worry about the idea of drowning because they didn't have water in their system in some way. And it was also the first in a franchise of 6 movies so far. Personally, I think they could stop at 6 and it'd be a good idea. But knowing the way Hollywood and other movie things are, when a movie does well, they burn it out. Until people get so tired of it, they stop watching and then go, oh, the film's... And then they want to blame the film as being a bust. Eventually. No, the problem is, you take a film and you run it so far. Happened with Elm Street. I mean, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Happened with the Halloween franchise. And even the Friday the 13th franchise. When you take a film and you run it so many times, people get tired of seeing the same stuff over and over and over. And I think Sharknado, personally, has reached that. And I'll be honest, I didn't think it was going to make it past the first film. Because even though I enjoyed it, I thought it'd be a good idea to have a sequel. Then I thought about it. It's the same idea being repeated in a different format. And it serves no real purpose to repeat the same story over and over like that. And I was a big Elm Street fan. The problem is, you get too repetitive or you go too far from the original idea of the story, you lose interest. And when you do it like they did with the reboot in 2010 with Nightmare on Elm Street, they changed the story of they changed Krueger's origin and Krueger's backstory and completely screwed it up altogether, in my view. Though the acting was great in that movie, the movie itself was bad. But anyways, sorry I keep getting off topic, and we'll come back to my shark films now. Also, that was the first in 6 films that they've done so far. And like I said, knowing Hollywood or any movie industry, if they can, they're probably going to produce a 7th sometime in the next 3 years. You know, they took a break, so people might be like, ooh, we'll give it time to die down a little bit, so that way when we say we're coming back, we'll have a new one ready to go. But anyways, now on to number 2 on my list, from 2009. Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. When I first saw this film, I watched it on Sci-Fi. That I know for a fact. And it actually made me think of Godzilla movies. Only, instead of using Godzilla, you took a giant shark. You know, it was like Godzilla versus Mothra. Godzilla versus this other animal. I mean, this other creature. Well, in this one, you got the Mega Shark versus the Giant Octopus. Only difference is, unlike Godzilla, you don't have a good creature in this film. And it featured Debbie Gibson. If you ask your parents or your grandparents, probably, they'll be able to tell you who that is. But in case you don't want to ask them, it's an 80s singer. Beautiful back then, and even now, to me, she still looks just as good as she did back then. During the time of this film, she was going under the name Deborah Gibson. Apparently, sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. Because even on a VH1 thing she did, where it was like she did like a thing about Who Am I, where people were supposed to guess who she was, and she showed a picture of her younger self, and people were trying to figure out who she was. A lot of them couldn't recognize her. Well, she started going under the name Deborah Gibson. But by a later film, anyways, and the idea of this one is that two prehistoric creatures get free, and they're causing mayhem at sea. And they needed to find a way to stop them. But like traditional Godzilla movies, spoiler alert here, speed ahead in it. Speed ahead about 30 seconds probably, or less if you don't want to know the idea of this. But this is just the idea. It's not how the film actually is. You got two creatures, they're causing mayhem at sea. Traditional Godzilla fans would know this. How do you stop it? You turn them against each other. It also shows what happens when people get stuck in the middle of this war. Not a very good place for humans, unfortunately, despite the fact that we like to think we're at the top of the food chain. And this one was actually the first installment of 4 movies in the Mega Shark franchise, which again makes me think of Jaws because it had the same number of films in total. Although, with this one, the quality went down real quick from the second one on. But the first 2 were actually pretty good. The first one was really good. Number 1 on my list, probably the most obvious choice, from 1975, the original Jaws. To me, this, in my personal opinion, this is the greatest film that uses a shark as a villain. And one of the reasons that is because you don't see the shark through most of the movie. Yeah, you see it here and there, but if I remember correctly, the actual amount of time spent showing the shark is like 10 minutes, 10, maybe 15 minutes of the film in total. Something I didn't know, and I actually found this really interesting, is that originally Spielberg thought John Williams' score for the theme of Jaws was a joke. He's even quoted as having said to him, "That's funny, John, really, but what did you really have in mind for the theme of Jaws?" Which to me, I would have, if I was Williams, I would have walked out at that moment just because he said that the way he did. Like, you think you can do better? Prove it. But anyways, later on, however, Spielberg has stated that without Williams' score, or the theme for Jaws anyways, the movie would only have been half as successful as it was. John Williams actually states that that particular score was what jump-started his career. And also, this film was seen when it initially released in 1975. In the U.S., was seen by over sorry, got tongue-tied there for a minute. When it was released in 1975, it was initially seen by over 67 million people in the U.S., which actually makes it, and I've checked this out in multiple places, and anywhere I've looked, it actually even states this. And I wondered, and it surprised me, but I guess it makes sense with that many people having seen it at one time. But with over 67 million people seeing it in its initial release in 1975 in the U.S., it was the first movie listed as a summer blockbuster. So tell me, what did you guys think of the movie? I mean, I recommend you guys watch the movie, Bait, as I'd like to hear your opinions on the movie in the comments below, as well as what's your favorite shark movie of all time, and what would you like for me to do for a future movie review or a future review? Yeah, what would you like for me to do for a future video? I'll do reviews. I'll give you my personal opinions on things. And I'll even look up details to support me in my arguments if you give me a topic I don't know that much about, but I think I can actually manage. Anyways, I look forward to your suggestions as well as your comments in the comments section, because I actually do read these and because I like to know what you think. And and also feel free to check out my previous videos and give your opinions on those. But till my next video, bye.